hefty remittance every month.
No. I said like if we really want to, yeah, because yeah, no, Pan's good, but because I saw.
Yeah, that's not rescuable. Anyway, she's a good lady.
Yeah.
Get it on silent here. Okay, well, we're, give it 10 seconds here. We'll be, okay, it's 6 o'clock. Tobias, if you would do the roll call.
Shooty,
Here.
Harstead,
Here.
Meyer,
Here.
Hildy.
Here. Okay, Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And just like to ask the Lord to keep watching over us and keep us all safe, and we really appreciate the work of our volunteer fire department and all the police and deputies and so on that keep us safe and keep the crime away, and asking for no hail, nothing but rain for the farmers. Amen. Motion to approve the agenda.
With item for EMS and fire protection on the consent calendar, Mike got the contracts
Okay,
tonight.
so to add it in,
Here, under consent calendar items.
okay.
Move to approve the amended agenda.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Shooty. Aye. Harstead.
Aye.
Meyer.
Aye.
Okay, anybody, a declaration of conflicts of interest, if anybody has anything, I don't, with anything on the agenda, I guess. So if nobody else does, we'll go by that. And now, a motion to approve the, meeting minutes from the March 23rd, 2026 meeting.
Move to approve.
Second?
Roll call vote.
Shooty.
Aye.
Fire.
Aye.
Okay. Motion to approve the financials and the claims.
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Shooty.
Aye.
Armstead.
Aye.
Fire.
Aye.
Okay, a motion to approve the consent calendar items. Is that right? Okay.
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Shooty.
Aye.
Armstead.
Aye.
Fire.
Aye.
Okay, now, the Q3 pricing contract, is it, you lost me.
We're at the public hearing.
We're.
Okay, last time I did approval of consent calendar, you said I had to go through everyone. I was like, okay, so now we're down to public hearing?
Yes.
Okay, there are none. Reports, city engineer, Jake is here.
Good evening all. First matter there, couple of agenda items related to the watershed improvement project at Scotia Water Tower. I've got that buttoned up, recirculation pump has been installed, operational. So before you are the final pay application, and corresponding final documents there, to start that closeout process with the wire iron. We would recommend that you, approve that, move forward with that, contingent upon receipt of all final documents from McGuire, to the tune of, lien waivers and the like. Of course, we'll, hold that on our end until all those are received, but your approval would allow that to be executed upon receipt of those documents.
So
Move
motion,
to approve, pay up 11 and final.
Second.
roll call vote.
Shooty.
Aye.
Armstead.
Aye.
Fire.
Aye.
And,
You the second one for the closeout docs, do another motion?
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of touched on both there. Pay apps,
Both motions
Yeah,
with
final reports.
contingency.
and then there's the closeout documents that was supplemented.
that's for the water line.
No, both water storage, Toby just has listed as two separate, motions, which is.
Okay.
right there.
Oh, you want two motions for that?
Yeah, we-
Oh, because we
Well,
approved
one
them
involves
both.
money because we have to put it in, we can just,
Okay,
a lot of it,
So move to approve the closeout documents.
yep, with his contingency.
Yeah,
And
contingent upon receipt of.
Yep.
Yes.
what he said.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, who's second, do that, Alan?
Yes, I second.
Second, okay, roll call vote.
Shooty.
Aye.
Armstead.
Aye.
Fire.
Aye.
Yeah, just a couple other brief things. The DENR board meeting was a few weeks ago now, end of March, where they give out all of their various SRF funding awards for both drinking water and clean water. The phase 2 project, as you know, was one of those projects, so that was funded through Danner's SRF program. The federal funds were used. They had coordinated that ahead of time, which gave us a 1/4 point reduction in interest rate. And then the sewer was granted just shy of $700,000 of principal forgiveness, which equates to a grant essentially. That's largely in response to those federal funds because they don't have the same eligibility as what a state revolve fund would. But in any case, those funding packages have been received. Truthfully, speaking freely, we would, of course, we're going to hope for a little more grant than just the $700,000 on the sewer. There wasn't any grant received on the water. That's large in part due to the finances that are presented with the application, and that you get, your enterprise funds aren't operating in the red, if you will, as some communities. And I'll refrain from giving, speaking in too much depth, because I'd be stepping on Tobias' toes. He knows better than I. But Danner's more or less suggesting that a revisit of some previous surcharges and/or rates would be appropriate to mitigate some of that surcharge implication. So don't have anything before you to act on. That's just a FYI. There's more numbers to crunch, but we will. I don't know, that'll come together in a month with bond council and such, but more to come on that as we look to move that.
And what is our overall estimate for phase 2?
Phase 2, so the funding package that was submitted was $5.12 million. So that was awarded through Danner. And about $3 million of that is clean water, $2 million of that is drinking water. Those are round figures, of course. And then on top of that, there's the other $600,000 of community access grant that was awarded through the DOT. So that brings the total project cost to about $5.7 million. That's a large project, about as large as what we would recommend biting off in one swoop, if you will. Big picture wise, I don't want to suggest it's all doom and gloom. I mean, there's $1.3 million in grant money, and in the project, so that there's some real value there, and some good optimism, and the like. You just obviously want it all, if you will. But so yeah, it's a $5.7 million project, large undertaking. Still on track, assuming the funding details play themselves out, to bid that later this year, to hopefully get a shovel in the ground, at least partially this fall, with next year being in large in part the full construction season.
So how soon are we required to come up with rates and surcharge?
There's no timeline. I've had communities sit on it for a year, and so there's really no impetus to go as quickly as possible. The only real push, I guess, would be wanting to move forward with the project and get things moving. But yeah, the actual closing of the loan through bond council and such, that can play itself out at the pace you guys wish. And then Tobias can correct me if I'm wrong, but the actual surcharges that would associate to those loans must be implemented prior to more or less the end of construction. You guys have habitually done it in advance of that, or so towards the beginning of construction. That's to not delay the inevitable. But if you close the loan this year, essentially you can start drawing funds. You might be looking at sometime in 2027 before that you'd actually implement the surcharge on the user bill.
Not to go too far down the rabbit hole, but if it's a 5.7 project, how much of that plays over to our contribution to the match on the region?
0.
I don't think now, with the new EPA, I am understanding that none of it does.
Yeah, so there was, and that's a good point, Mike. I'm glad you brought it up. So through part of the funding acquisition for this project, I mentioned Danner had reached out inquiring about the city of Crook's willingness to use federal funds for that quarter-point reduction. We had initially said no, we didn't want to, because we felt that would harm our ability, if you will, to use those funds towards the impending regional wastewater project. Danner questioned the ability to do that and took it upon themselves, and rightfully so, to reach out to the EPA, to which the EPA more or less responded with, yes, Danner's understanding is correct that any any matching component of that project would need to be incorporated into the overall big picture of the regionalization, play a part in regionalization, go through the same environmental review process, and more or less be, I'll say, tied pretty directly to that effort. So some of the understanding that we have previously had, that some of these, not only, like a current project, but retroactive funds that were spent on clean water, while we were understanding or hopeful that that was going to be the match part of it, it seems like that's not going to be the case. So any future match for that, which is still a big question mark as far as what needs to match and what dollar figure needs to match, is going to have to be a different project that has a more direct tie to what was submitted upon in the application. I did kind of that, prompted the question with Danner, what would be an appropriate match then, and how might we fund that? And the response there was, a local improvement that would, be necessitated by the regionalization. So if you're doing a meter station or transferring lagoons to a equalization basin, something along those lines would be more what both the EPA and DNR would foresee as the match, 20% match on that regionalization, where the grant dollars would pay for the backbone, for lack of a better term, of the development fund.
Who has the upper hand, Danner or EPA?
Well, I don't know that there's any upper hand. They both see it the same way. So I don't think it's one entity telling the other what they'd like to see. It's both agreeing that that's the appropriate use of the funds. There's no doubt that Danner and EPA have been and will be conversating, throughout this process. There's no keeping Danner in the dark, if you will. I'm not suggesting that anybody's trying to do that, but Danner wasn't brought in on the front end, and they've been brought up to light by EPA, and this, even evidenced by some of the more recent water discussions trying to go a similar route for some water funding. We've received calls from Danner saying that the teams in Washington DC are reaching out to Danner. They're just, all water and wastewater funds through the state of South Dakota, that extended state of South Dakota, it comes from the federal government. Danner's a part of that process. So I don't think there's much of an upper hand. It's that, they're both following the same guidelines.
So there's, go ahead.
So my fear is this: if we're going to do a $5 million project, ballpark, what's that going to be in a surcharge?
That's where I'm waiting for the math from the Danner. So the surcharge roughly is, if you do full surcharge, that's without rate restructuring, $20 roughly for water, and I want to say 14 or 15. Oh, 20 for sewer, 14 or 15 for water.
So $35.
Generally
speaking.
And that's
Monto residents.
so okay, but that, let's first run the numbers, because Danner has
Well, I understand, but the bigger point is, we were counting on doing that project to get our
exactly.
play in for the big grant.
Yep.
And if we don't, then we have to do another project.
And another surcharge.
And so if a $5 million project is a $35 surcharge, basically, we're gonna have to do another one of similar scope.
And let's add on to that point. These projects are very particular. So road surfacing, that's also a significant portion of the project, does not count towards eligible costs. So it would only be like the pipe, excavation, and so forth. So it's very niche. So even on that project, us, in good faith moving ahead, because we're given the impression, right, and the understanding that the wastewater portion was eligible for the regionalization grant. That is the honest truth. And then EPA came back, said, well, wait a minute, it's not. because of the EPA environmental review, which would delay this project years. And then also by very narrowing what would be eligible, even if we did the EPA review. So that's why they reach out with the BABA funding, which is the Buy American, or Build American, Buy American. So, and that's what brings you 0.25%. I think the key issue, or multiple key issues, better communication and narrowing down what this regionalization grant is eligible for. And then maybe pushing a little bit further, saying, oh, well, look, the city of Crooks is making these vast infrastructure improvements, and now we're being told, but those are not eligible. So, unfortunately, that's the unfortunate news, and we will do our best to structure rates where we mitigate the impact. I mean, that's one thing for sure. And speaking of the rate reduction, so we can look at that for all surcharges, but we need to get written approval from the Danner before we do that. And the way we do rates is ordinance, because the Danner has expressed a preference for ordinance to do rate implementation, which you all know ordinance takes much longer than a resolution. I mean, I think there are so many variables here that kind of have related and unrelated have really come back. And this was I'll say this, a fairly disappointing piece of news to say that, I want to say I was surprised out of nowhere, this is not eligible. And even if it was only this portion. So it already was a very narrow focus. And we all know time value of money. That grant portion is, I don't say worth less and less, but it's worth less and less. And now we're here.
So it sounds like we couldn't even do another project in town. It wouldn't qualify. It'd have to be,
Basically, we're gonna have to pay our share of 20% of the
Out of pocket.
regionalization.
That's.
I don't know how the hell we do that.
I don't
No, I don't
we
either.
don't. I mean,
at this point,
I've looked at some financing stuff where we can just at least short up, green bonds, anything. I mean, we're working on that, but we're gonna, without having some of these costs being eligible, at least.
Well, it completely changes my attitude about doing phase 2.
exactly.
I mean, it needs it, and there's more need there, but for the long-term success of this community, we need the regionalization. And I don't know that we can stomach both.
It would be tough. We already carry a significant debt load.
Yeah.
In our water and sewer fund. We spend 50+% of every dollar we take in on debt. Water is gonna be 30%. We have a hard time, with that already. That's why it is so frustrating and disappointing to get that news, because I think the impression was this will be eligible, so we can, as part of the plan, it was forged and to move ahead and say, hey, these are costs that will be counting towards that, only then to be told, even if they did count, you would have had to do the EPA review, which that's another not insignificant portion. If we had known that, that may have been worth, years ago when we knew this to start that process. But then, because even with a narrow cost focus, we would still have some that we could use, but now we're just stuck between a rock and a hard place. We have crumbling infrastructure, arguably probably some of the worst in town.
So where are we at? If we didn't move ahead, where are we at with SRF? If we say we don't know what we're gonna do yet, but.
Well, sorry, I didn't interrupt you there, Butch. There's certainly no reason to make a decision tonight. Like Tobias said, we got some numbers to crunch, I think, the appropriate route here would be to, look at the books, figure out what that true user rate impact would be, net everything out, like Tobias said, you can change some of those pre-existing surcharges. Crooks is a growing community, so your 110% debt coverage exponentially increases as you grow users. And it's advantageous to lower those surcharges and not your base rate to the extent possible, because then it frees up liquid cash, as opposed to surcharges are tied up as debt coverage. It can't be used for operating expenses. So, you know, we don't have enough information to be able to break that out right now. That's a to-do for Tobias and I over the course of the next few weeks or so. But to kind of step back and, you know, answer your earlier question, yes, it's definitely trending in a way that our in-town improvements are going to have to be standalone from the regionalization. I couldn't agree more. That's bad news. This part
Pretty
is
big
not
kick in the
local.
nuts is what it is.
It is, yeah. And looking back, I you know, if I, you know, gut check myself a little bit, probably, you know, too good to be true type of scenario, maybe one could argue. You know, hindsight's 20/20, easy to say now, but you know, the other reality is, as I think this kind of through, you know, speaking candidly, is that, you know, there's only so many funds that are in that grant package, you know, to include the 80% grant plus the, you know, the 20% match. So, you know, adding a $5 million project, or, you know, whether it's phase 2 or phase 3, big picture wise, that was probably always going to be at the bottom of the priority list for the EPA. So, not saying that, you know, it couldn't have worked into the math had the eligibility allowed, but certainly not trending that way. But yes, you know, kind of they got that, and then the reconstruction projects are kind of their own beast. Like Tobias mentioned, you know, there's that need doesn't go away. It's been, what was 2019 when we did the Palmyra project, so what's that, 7 years ago. You know, you know, the time is right if the numbers work, and I realize, you know, money controls, so we'll let the math do the talking. You know, the way this regionalization has played out, it's going to be, it's not going to be 2027 when you have to write another check for that regionalization project. It's likely to be 3 or 4 years from now. So, you know, if you were to delay a phase 2 project, or you know, any reconstruction project for that matter, to prioritize regionalization today, I don't think you're delaying it 2 or 3 years. I think you're delaying it 7 or 8 years, because it's going to take 5 to get through regionalization, and then it's going to take you another few to get back into your routine. So, some information to chew on there.
Is there a political angle to this? You know, Thune was involved with the grant. Is any?
I don't know. I'm gonna say no. You know, I mean, you know, he did what he could to get the grant allocation, but to my knowledge, there's not any workaround to the way the regulation, if you will, is, you know, kind of written, and the stipulation set forth that the eligibility of the CDS request is essentially verbatim the eligibility of the SRF. So that's kind of where the, you know, DAN or EPA are working hand in hand. Those SRF funds all originate from the federal government. They just end up getting revolved through the state. As people make debt payments, that money gets back into the state. So that's where the revolving nature comes from. But all of those funds originate from DC, and that's why they got the same red tape. Just so happens when they come direct from DC, there's a little more red tape.
So how long do we have to decide to go ahead or not? What's the window here? Do we have to figure this out in 30 days or 60 days?
No, like I said, you can wait as long as you want. There's a couple of communities I know that haven't acted on funding packages that were awarded this time last year. So, you know, you got some time to decide what's best for the city of Crow. So you don't have to, I'm not going to be here in a month and saying you got to decide today. It's just a matter of, yeah, you know, what's comfortable for construction and getting all the pieces together.
Yeah, before, when we started, it was, well, if you already had a project done, or was just getting done, it didn't qualify. Now, like Mike said, we all thought we're gonna kill two birds with one stone, do this, and that's gonna be our, part of our, match on the regional. And,
Yeah, it kind of progressively got more and more restrictive as we began to gather more information. Like you said, Butch, the, initial correspondence and the message was dating back to, I don't recall the specific date, it was a year before we had heard the news, or plus or minus. And then it kind of changed to, well, no, anything going forward, and now it's gotta be, in that big picture and more or less tied to that original request.
well, I think we definitely have to sit back and take a look at it, and you guys can figure up, what you can come up with, but, yeah, just, the project need to be done, but the whole thing is, yeah, it's very disappointing. As far as the, if we let for bid, will a delay of 30 to 90 days affect that much?
Certainly not big picture price wise.
Dan shaking his head no.
Yeah. The only real push we have as far as a bid date goes was wanting to get the storm sewer in, across the New Hope baseball field in August, so we can seed it in September and get grass established yet this fall. So this time next year, there's grass there and not mud. If we delay this into, beyond that original schedule, that's really the only implication is we likely won't have grass established in the spring or next spring. But even then, we could look to lay all year, or just, look at the phasing a little bit differently. So, I hate to let 2 acres of grass, control our whole schedule here.
I just keep thinking somebody at Danner didn't like it when we got it, and now they're somehow added this to it. I don't know. I guess I'm gonna do some digging politically, but I don't see how we can act on it tonight.
No, this was just bring it up for informational purposes, and I'm glad it did, because it made for some good conversation there.
Anything else on?
No, the only, I suppose the only noteworthy deal, have had some communication with CSU Falls. They have been actively working with their consultants on the traffic impact study, planning for CR 130 build out. Still more questions than answers, but the part of that approval to the CSU Falls was that traffic impact study would need to be brought to the CSU Falls. So when that final version's available, we will of course have it too, and be able to shed some light on kind of the build out of that and the timeline associated with it, depending on what happens first, interchange, road, what have you, but certainly no expectation at this time that there's going to be any financial commitment from the city of Crooks. It's not a surprise to anybody, it's been a message all along, but still going well there. That's all I got. Is there any other questions? No, very bad news tonight, so I guess I want to stop talking.
Okay, utility, anything?
Meter replacement program's going ahead. Guys are passing their certificates. We're digitalizing more maps. We're just rolling out some other projects, potential moving of the steel along 258th Street, permanent easement acquisitions, pretty much boilerplate stuff. Overall,
Economic development, Mike, you got anything?
I don't have anything.
I don't either. Other than I have contacted, Veldco on the apartments out here, and sometime in June, we're gonna try and do an open house with them, ribbon cutting, maybe latter part of June, when they have units ready to look at. Streets, we got the slurry seal going. Is that gonna be like July?
Yeah, we haven't got a schedule. They're still working through contracts with both, all communities, including City of Sioux Falls. So, once there's a pre-construction meeting, we'll be looked into that better and have a better idea. But yeah, historically, July or August, the City of Sioux Falls last couple of years has required the contractor to complete Sioux Falls before they do these surrounding communities. Sioux Falls gets that in the bid, so that eliminates the possibility of happening any sooner than that.
And we are getting some bad spots in town. One is the Western Drive. There's another spot on West 4th Street, west of West Ave. But Chad and I will be driving around. If you see any spots for patching, and schedule on that'll be when they're caught up with mowing, and we have 3 of the 4 or all 4 of the guys to help with that. P&Z.
I have just a few things to report. Probably the biggest one that we've been working on is our future land use map. Because of the Smithfield thing, we've stepped up on how we're looking at neighboring property, how we're looking at Crooks expansion. We just got back probably our 3rd generation of edits from CCOG, and we'll talk about that at P&Z next week. So that's been kind of the fun one to do. One of the things with that, we worked on our major street plan a little bit as far as, where is a truck route, things like we won't let trucks drive through Crooks anymore. There's some things that'll go along with it that we've been investigating and see how we can make that better. So with any sort of ag truck hauling hogs to Smithfield would drive through the middle of Crooks every day. So just kind of some baggage with that. Off-premises signage, we're working on that, as it relates to stuff along the interstate. We've got an in-home business update that we're looking at. That'll be reviewed again next week. Comprehensive plan, we have one, but it'll follow the land use map when we get that organized. And like we like it, then we'll come back to that comprehensive plan. And large lot development, we worked with the east side of town off of Fourth as an area that we can create some acreage, some residential acreage type properties. Fairly straightforward, nothing too weird about it. A couple recent things, the property on the end of Main Street, had some inquiries related to that as far as zoning wise, light industrial property, so there's some interest in that. Few inquiries now, we seem to get more calls now because Smithfield is coming up. What do you have for property that can do this kind of thing? But our meeting's next week, and these 5 things are the big things on the ticket that we'll be looking at next week.
Well, I encourage anybody listening or here to go. I've been working with Jeff on the future use also, and talked to Mike a little bit. But just a mile west of town, if you look at a big map, that's T. Ellis Road. So the next interchange on I-90 in 25 years, 20 years will be an interchange at the T. Ellis Road. And I've talked to most of the landowners, but my goal is to annex all the way down to the interstate and all the way down La Mesa to at least 260th. And I'm still meeting with farmers, but most everybody since Smithfield has happened is on our side to, this is the only way we can control the Sioux Falls creep, for a better word, whatever you want to call it, and be able to say what goes where in the future. Otherwise, Sioux Falls has told me 10 times everything on the south side of County Road 130 is theirs. And that ain't gonna happen. But so I'll be working on that. Government buildings and IT infrastructure.
Nothing new to report except for we're changing back to DocuSign.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Turns out Adobe implementation was so clunky and bad that it became time consuming to a point that it was inefficient. So turns out DocuSign will be as budgeted for. I'll go back to the drawing board. Speaking of IT though, we got approached again by the state's cybersecurity programs from DSU, so we were most likely trying to get on the project boundary fence plan. Some of the managed email providers, they hopefully are opening up funding so we can use our local providers. So there'll be a variety of agreements coming through in the future, just so that way we can stay on track there.
Parks, I think Mike had a meeting last week.
We, the fire department cleaned the waterway at Sunset Park. What is the rule with the rest of that green space? Is there a rule? Does anybody know the answer to that?
It's like a waterway, like what
It's a dedicated wetland. I don't know what,
As far as what you can do with it, what you can't.
Can we burn it off?
I think, yeah, I can burn it off. I don't think, part of wetlands are just as much subsurface as they are above surface soils, soil characteristics. So, certainly you would have to get permission to excavate with them, but, burning, to my understanding, would be a maintenance item and would be able to be done.
We pretty much got hit up by every other homeowner over there wondering why we didn't do all the rest of it.
yeah.
So we will look at, if we're gonna do it, we need to do it in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, part of that wetland is I've been part of digging in one or two. But it's also the whatever species of, whether, I don't care if it's a minnow or a certain kind of mouse, and it's a certain kind of grass is also part of it. So I don't know how you get by burning it either, because when they mitigate or when they do wetlands, they look at all that, what kind of grass, what's been growing there, what animals, fish, minnows. But
I can tell you the part that we cleaned out was significant rabbit habitat.
yeah, I was gonna
Going
say,
on all over Crooks.
Luckily, rabbits aren't endangered. So.
Yeah.
this is a joke, but I was gonna say, God, did you see them 20 rabbits that were half burned running across the street? Boy, that wouldn't have gone over well. But yeah, we got more rabbits in there.
Cleaning that out, there's a lot of crap in there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been, I don't know that that's ever been cleaned out, since the park was formed, really. So we hauled a bunch of stuff out of there, and 2 pickup loads worth of stuff went to the landfill. There are all kinds of volunteer trees through there. I don't know if we can just go in there and clip those off or not. I don't know, but that would help as well.
Yeah, the ones way to the west we have by hand, it's actually by Andrew Drive. And of course, the ones that aren't in the wetland, we have as far as we can reach with the mini excavator. But while we're talking about that, the same thing's over at Heritage Pond. And the very west kind of holding pond before it runs into the next, the very west, it's not a big area, but if that could get burned, and there's also some trees, but if that could get burned, that, because all that is kind of a slow it down before it gets to the next. But if
It's a
you,
sediment trap, and that, that particular one was designed as a sediment trap, so there's nothing that says you can't go and actually excavate that one out.
yeah, and
That one was.
we'll have a mini excavator when we do our street patching, so I thought I'd do it, but well, it's public here, I would like to ask the fire department to do what they can on that sediment pond as far as it burns.
We can try that too. So we had Parks Board meeting last week. Talked a lot about the baseball land. We'll make our final payment on that next January. And we need to kick into hyperdrive some fundraising efforts, because it's gonna take $3.5 million to build ball fields, and the city will never have $3.5 million to dedicate to ball fields. So the Tri-Valley Baseball Association is looking to hire a professional fundraiser to go after businesses around us and so forth, to do a capital campaign to get that done. So we had, they came in, they're asking the Crooks Development Corp to help fund that the initial cost of getting a fundraiser going. So we had a good discussion about that. The other thing that we talked about a bunch, and I have been bombarded the last 2 months with people getting a little nutso about this adult football team that is using Sunset Park. We do not have any type of facility use agreement for the parks. Someone who's involved with that has been involved with flag football in the past. So they knew the combinations to the sheds and stuff, and used scoreboards and stuff, other equipment that, it's part of the park. It was fundraised and paid for by flag football. We've been checking up on them quite regularly after they've played and so forth. Really no measurable damage to the fields at all, anything like that. The concern lies with pretty much everybody that lives around that park. I mean, that park is an anomaly. If you go compare that to parks around Sioux Falls and everything else, you don't have a 5-acre plot in the middle of a residential development. I mean, most all the other parks are in low-lying areas, and there just aren't residential people around them. I've heard a ton of complaining about the language down there when those games are going on. You may not be able to imagine. And the drinking has been an issue. They're also charging a gate fee to get into the park. And that's a public park. They're not preserving it. They're providing us a copy of an insurance policy. Am I right? They haven't even done that.
Nope.
It was asked for last year, but again, we don't have a policy. We don't have anything to rent a park or to, we have a facility use agreement for the community center. So it was the overwhelming feeling of the Parks Board that we need to get something together. This group, this football team thing, they've basically been run off of every park that they've worked with in the past. Whether it's behavior, usage, whatever you want to call it. They pretty much, I think they've had 5 or 6 different homes in the last 5 years. So, like I said, it isn't that they're doing any damage, but they are making it a less than desirable place to be while they're there. If that's about all I can say about it. So,
Well, they were there last Saturday. They showed up and we got, 20-some hundreds last Saturday, and then they're out there shortly after that. I see they're wearing cleats. And I'm going, those big guys gotta be hard on the turf. But I'm just a little guy, and I didn't go down there and said, hey, I was hoping to hear something tonight, but yeah, I don't think they should be allowed till we have some kind of agreement, and if they pay or what. I didn't realize they were drinking down there. I've seen little kids around there, and I hope they weren't stopping some little group that wanted to play soccer or football from being able to do that. That was one of my worries too.
it'd be pretty tough to get much else going on when they're doing their thing.
Can't we just be done with it?
I don't know.
So it's a public facility.
We don't have a policy that says they can't be there. I mean,
All right.
When do they usually play? Saturdays, Sundays?
Saturdays.
They've been practicing on Saturdays.
I mean, that's a great time to water the fields.
No, that's water loss. It's too hot.
Too high?
That's a good idea. Yeah, they're there for 4 to 5 hours when they're there. It's surprising how long. And this last Saturday, they had a bus there. I don't know if the bus was a concession bus or,
Everything gets out of control.
Like a whole bus?
well, a mini bus, sheesh.
It's nice one time to one group, and that's why you can't have nice things.
So I think something should be stopped until there's some kind of agreement. So how do we do that?
Well, we have a facility use agreement. We could draft something up.
I mean, do we just go down there when I see them there and
Can we just talk to the other 5 towns and see what they did? Do we know the other 5 towns?
Canton and Lennox are 2 that I talked to. They don't have facility use agreements either. They just told them they could. That was the words from their parks people.
Strong suggestion
Yeah.
to find a different venue.
Can't you put a no alcohol in the park?
Yeah, that'd be, well,
They always
You
think
can put all the signs you want, they're gonna enforce it.
I know.
That's the problem.
Gotta go out there.
I mean, let's deputize Bill.
yeah.
Be a big job.
Get
So
your,
next Saturday, Bill, I'll call you and then you and I can go over there.
You're gonna buy a gun, I gotta bring my own.
You gotta bring a gun. I can't have one.
I can.
So anyway, yeah, those guys are big. And,
they're big, I've been down there, well, they don't move so fast, but, like I said, the fact of the matter is, we've been pretty diligent every time they've been here to go look for damage, because we had a couple instances last year where, they bring field markers and stuff, and they were driving out on fields, well, they don't know where the sprinkler heads are. So, we told them, hey, you can't drive inside the paths, and they've abided by that. And, like I said, they're not doing any damage to the field. It's more of it's a nuisance is what it is.
well, we're paying taxes to keep it up. And, they're not citizens from crooks. I know that prejudice.
There's
I
gotta be
guess.
someone if they're letting them into the gates, or letting them into the buildings to get the scoreboard, someone.
No, like I said, one of the guys used to be part of flag football, so he knew the keypads.
That's pretty bad there. Okay,
I don't want the work of the volunteers that have busted their butts to make that park nice to get wrecked.
And it's every weekend?
It's darn near.
Want me to call you? if I
Can we
see-
just pass an ordinance saying no semi-pro football in the city of Crooks?
It has to be like no usage or no usage of cleats in the park. That'll be the first step, is like you
Flag football uses them all the time.
make, but not adult cleats, and it has to tear up the grass. It's
The
just-
little, the little kids' feet get worse.
Oh, wow. No, I guess no football in the park. No,
I mean, I think it would be appropriate to put together a facility use agreement. And, you know, when we modified the one for the community center to make it much more costly for people outside of town to reserve, I want something like that.
Okay, well, I will go down there, if I see him this Saturday or the next one, I will go ask him to hold off until we get a facility agreement. And,
I mean, so is it okay if we charge them money and then we're okay with it? Or do we just want them out of there completely?
well,
I
if
think
you,
you gotta figure out what you want.
according to Mike, if you word it right, or,
What I've understood is they're running on such a shoestring that they're charging gate to be able to pay the refs, is what they're saying. So if they gotta pay to use the field, I don't know that they can do that.
Okay.
I don't know that, but
so I'm gonna call Eric, I'm gonna call Bill. I want some big guys.
2,500 a season.
I'll call Dan.
I had a question. My question on this, I found this and I was looking at this and they're advertising their season games here in Gross at home field of Sunset Park. Like,
Really?
if you had some sort of agreement with them, I would assume you'd have an agreement that said you can't advertise scheduled games that you're collecting a gate fee for without some sort of agreement.
Yeah.
How'd you find that?
Somewhere, Sioux Empire Crusade or social media.
Okay.
Who are they playing? Like, what are their teams from?
Warner's mascot names, so I do not.
yeah, Watertown's got a team. There's a couple down in Iowa.
Well, they all, I'm waiting for one of them to have a heart attack.
I mean,
'cause they all-
honestly, I equate it to beer league softball. You know, we never had a facility use agreement for those either. But typically, if there was a team playing in Crooks, it was a Crooks team. This is not that. So,
Well, I'll get the name of whoever is the lead when I get,
well, somebody's been emailing Chad, right?
Yeah, and that was mainly about their, what's that day called, Fun Day. So they had to fill out a special event permit application, which is the new procedure, but that's only for one day. Facility use agreement is, okay, so I'm just to consideration, facility use agreement with payment would indicate they have exclusive use right of that facility. So if other people try to use the park, they can't use it. Not having a facility use agreement, you're gonna have a hard time getting them out without like saying, okay, strong suggestion, you gotta leave.
Well, and honestly, in a facility use agreement, I would also include something about not being able to charge people to be in the park. Because there's still a playground, there's still a shelter, there's still other things.
Yeah, and that has been my opinion for a long time, that charging a gate fee is not okay, because you're keeping people from accessing a publicly funded facility, which is a park. That's why facility use agreement specifying, you have use of the fields for this time frame, and these are we're doing it with the dance lady. Here are all the rules, right? Here's what you have, here's your schedule, but this is what needs to happen, and you gotta pay. And that was the issue I think we ran in last year. We told them, they're charging a parking fee, and I told them, no parking fee, because that's a public parking lot. If someone wants to park their vehicle there to use the park as a facility, no. I mean, it's inappropriate. That's why facility use agreements protect the organizer as much as it does the city, because it outlines what you can and can't do.
do we require an insurance
Yep,
policy?
and that's that $1 million worth of insurance like we would do, and then usually you would have to devise some sort of fee that they would pay, and just say, okay, here you go, this is what you pay, and then it's gonna be a rental, and that can be used, obviously you would have to do the math, but starting with the facility use agreement is the first step, and you can individually approve them without having a policy in place right now, with like, okay, you wanna use the park, here's the facility use agreement. that can be worked through and then approved at the next meeting. I think what you're gonna run into trouble is, without strongly suggesting you can't be here and play, right? We don't really have much to stand on as a city, unless you're saying the damage that they're causing is so detrimental, or that the behavior is unruly or disturbing the peace, and then you would, unfortunately, have our deputy crew already in place, then they would have to rough them up, get them out. So, Butch, Bill, and whoever the third one was.
That's where Eric and Bill are gonna handle
But
it.
I'll reach
We've got 2
out.
weeks till they come back.
Well,
supposedly.
we checked around. Tri-Valley Baseball does a couple of tournaments. They do not charge gate anymore. They used to. Flag football never charges a gate. There's team fees involved
Yeah.
to participate in the league and stuff, but there's no, you don't have to pay to get into the park to watch.
And then all that is coordinated with Chad on what day they wanna use or what their schedule is to see if it fits.
And the guy we have been working with, he has been good. I will say that in his defense. Like, he has reached out, he will sign whatever. I think it's north of the dynamic than at the park, which after you had relayed that, I wasn't aware of the drinking and the unruly behavior. And of course, given Sunset Park's location, it's unfortunate because it is right there in 20 homes' backyard and the walking path, so.
There's kids out there
Yeah.
playing, and I can't tell if any of them haven't been able to play on the field, but, you know, that some are out there with a baseball, glove, or bat.
If we took away the scoreboard equipment, would they still come there? If we could change the locks for a few $100, would they still be there if the scoreboards weren't there, if they weren't working?
I don't know.
I think they're probably running out of places to go.
I'm sure they are.
And that, I mean,
That's probably because we haven't done anything, they're still, well, if there's a contact, I'll get it from you or Chad, unless you want to, but I'll go ahead and contact them, ask them to hold off until we get a facility use agreement put together, along with an insurance policy. Okay, finance,
I just wanted to throw one
Oh.
more thing out for park.
yeah,
If you haven't gotten a chance to check out Tri-Valley softball when they play at New Hope Park, they have their first game of the season. They played, Tri-Valley is number 1. They played number 2, Madison. Madison started their bus on fire about 4 blocks away from the field. So they got to meet me first and then go play softball. But I would bet you for that game alone, I bet there was 400 people down in that park to watch. That was a lot of fun. And that's what's showing up most of the time. So there is some talk at the school when they built they have a field out at the school now that they're just practicing on. They've been talking about making that their permanent home. But they don't have any bleachers out there or anything else. And when you have 400 people show up to watch a game, they're rethinking that a little bit. So it's pretty cool to see that many people going nuts in the park. So if you get a chance, swing down and check out the
yeah,
game.
I think they had a home game today at 3:30 with Chester, I think.
Yeah.
there's a game going on now.
Yep.
Or there was.
Yep.
Okay, finance,
Annual report, as that's what this week is scheduled for. We're doing the procurement policies moving ahead, same with the internal control policy. Personnel policy will have to be amended for the rollout of the time card software. We're talking to other payment processors or seeing how we can move all of our stuff to PSC1 compliant portals rather than doing ACH in-house. So we've been negotiating with them. Overall, we're trying to reduce liability within the city office with sensitive information as much as we can. So hopefully there will be some movement here soon. Otherwise, just been pretty much the same every month. Nothing to worry. So
Is there, an audit coming up. Did I see that?
Well, we have an audit meeting this Friday, and once that's at the DLA, so that will then be introduced hopefully at the April 23rd meeting for approval. And then, we'll probably gonna have another audit later on this year for 2025. Draft has been looking good, unmodified opinion, so nothing that I would be too worried about.
What time is that again?
9 a.m.
Hey, code enforcement.
Well, code enforcement has picked up. Inoperable vehicles parked in backyards, trash in backyards. There's alleys in town when you drive through them and you see the code violations. So it's going to be a big time cleanup effort again this year. So we're doing doing the due diligence there. So that will be, I'll say, aggressively pursued with the diligence it needs to. If you do see code violations, please let me know.
Okay. Other
I
bid.
had one
Go ahead.
yesterday that we handled, but there's some interesting things going on around our lovely pond.
Oh,
I
okay.
watched a couple of boys try and shoot a goose with a bow and arrow yesterday.
Looked like a little silver Chevy truck.
No, I know exactly who they were and who their mom and dad are. So I had a game fish and parks officer come out, and the two of us had a discussion with the two little boys, and I don't think that will happen again, but there is a significant amount of wildlife that comes in around that pond. So, yeah, just something to be aware of.
You're not allowed to shoot a bow and arrow at all down there, right?
Correct.
At a goose or a target.
Yeah, either or. Either or.
What about a fish?
I suppose it would be legal to bow fish down there.
Oh, that's
Learn something. There's no carp in there,
Yeah, there are.
is there?
There's some big ones.
yeah.
The one I saw, I'm guessing, was probably between 8 to 10 pounds. Rolling around in the grass on the edge. Game Fish and Parks didn't put those there.
No. Well, Cliff got bullheads and stuff in his, and he didn't put them in there either.
Yeah,
Probably those same geese that are getting shot at a regular position.
yeah.
Just drop a carb.
Okay, other business, I just, wanted to query the, council about, don't have to vote on it tonight or just discuss it, but our second meeting of the month, do you feel,
Yeah, that's at the bottom.
Yeah, so I'll move it ahead.
What's that?
is it on the back page?
Yeah,
but
it's on the back page.
All right,
So
good. I mean, it's,
we can talk about it now. though.
yeah, I'll just do that. Move it up now.
okay,
Majority.
yeah. Well, I just, we were doing, extra meeting and we do a call in and, for the second one, usually something that came up or some bills that need to be paid. And then we thought, let's just always have a second meeting. Personally, I'm good either way. I think most of the time we can call it a special meeting if we don't have a regular meeting, and we can do a call in. It's usually something that takes 10 minutes if, anyway, that's my opinion. So,
I would rather just go back to being the call and it gets a bit,
One monthly meeting?
yes.
Yes.
How do you feel about it?
Don't matter to me. Can I call them in or I can come here? I guess whatever's better for billing or for providing. If it's better when we approve.
Well, we just did the special, with the second meeting, right, because we had so many special meetings over the years where this provided us the ability to have a schedule that you could provide to the public, like, here's your date, submit it, you miss it, too bad. And the second meeting was, for years, encouraged by the auditors, because whenever we did a motion or a resolution or pass an ordinance that we could prepay bills, we get the comment, you shouldn't have done this. And I was like, well, how does everyone else do it when they only have one monthly meeting? It's just, it's your guys' decision at the end of the day. It's just,
Well, we could still have a dedicated meeting, but you can call in.
Well, yeah, I honestly, for the second meeting, I mean, if we could be more judicious, if there isn't something that can't wait 2 more weeks, then we can cancel it.
That's what I was gonna say.
I mean, the fact of the matter is, most of those meetings, there's been something agenda-wise that we needed to get done.
yep. And it was always, the goal was also be a button-up meeting, right? You have your first reading at the first meeting, because you need to have the 5 days intervening. Then at the second meeting, you just do a second reading, and then just, it really, the intention, I think, was, this was at most gonna be half an hour, 15 minutes. Pay those bills where the vendor will not wait or give us an earful. Button up those items that we need to get done, and the very rare occasion, okay, there is a hearing for a really pressing item that then can be scheduled. Like Mayor Bush said, I mean, if anyone wants to call in, that's fine. Someone will be here, door will be open. It's just, I think the initial rollout was bumpy, where we had quorum issues, and I think that's where we run into the problem, where suddenly we have a second meeting that is actually scheduled and part of the Crook City Code, and then we don't have the quorum. I mean, whatever works. If you want to call it a special meeting, you can do that too, and say, okay, do we need one? Either one, as long as it's statutorily noted. That's
Could we
really the
just
key part.
reserve that Monday for a special meeting if one needs to be called?
Then I'll just do 1 monthly meeting, amend the code, and say, okay, if you need a special meeting, you need a special meeting.
It's on the state, not this time.
So, I mean, I love being here either way, so we should increase our meeting frequency.
Sure, let's try it through the summer. So 1 meeting a month for the summer, for the next 3 months, 4 months. May, June, July, August.
It's longer to change the code.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's gonna take longer to change the city code than,
Okay,
I mean,
no, we keep it the same.
okay.
I'd rather keep them both on the books. And there isn't a solid reason for having the second one been canceled.
Well, I think
And if you
it's
guys,
acceptable to call in. Second meeting is usually a limited, agenda. And I'll always be here if I'm in town. Tobias will be here. Mike, I mean, it's not like somebody couldn't get in the door. So I think, I like that because I was afraid at some point somebody would come along and say, oh, you're having all these special meetings and you're doing something, you don't want us to know about.
All right,
they're gonna say that irregardless.
So,
It's always a man keeping an eye.
okay, sorry, okay, old business. Second reading of ordinance 372. An ordinance of the city of Crook, South Dakota, amending the 2023 revised Crook zoning regulations by amending chapter 12, additional use regulations, section 12.10 landscaping standards, section 12.14 architectural standards. We've kind of held off on this, and we've got our planning and zoning. Mr. Nelson is here, and I think we're gonna vote, but I think wanna have Jeff.
Yeah, well, just briefly, last time Eric had a question about the, what if somebody doesn't do it, which I think the question I include. But it's a big, so Crook's Municipal Code has a section which covers anything, related to somebody that isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing. So it falls under the auspices of nasty fines and jail time. which is out there. In the P and Z portion of the code, what's written in our P and Z code, it says that it can go to the official authority for the city of Crooks, and then they can deal with it, whether that be give more time on a building permit or some other fashion, which they can do. But we really don't have, which I found interesting, there's no real simple way to deal with that very question. The worst thing would be to go to attorney and somebody's really being a butthead about it. I can probably find a better choice of words. The simple way it would be just, it's a workout thing. I mean, the whole idea behind the landscape standard is not to cause somebody a problem. It's for the community. It's to make things better. But I did find it interesting trying to answer that question. Is I couldn't find the answer I was looking for. Just there's a in the official municipal code, there's a section that covers that administrative stuff, but that covers everything related to somebody not doing something they're supposed to do. And then on the planning side, goes to the official authority. So, I think it's an issue. No, I mean, whether you plant a tree or plant grass, it's not an issue. The whole idea is to make things look better.
I'll add, this is just me speaking in relation to knowledge of landscaping standards, not per se this exact words, but just broader communities. I believe the intent, Jeff cut me off, but I want to speak here, is that, these standards are incorporated into new builds, the design of new builds for, commercial properties or multifamily properties, what have you. So the intent is that they'll be incorporated into the design, and if they're not, they don't get a building permit, and they must be constructed with the project, and if they're not, they don't get occupancy because they have to build to what they designed. So, those two things are the bread and butter of your enforcement. If they were to, incorporate their landscaping and then it were to die or need replacement, I suppose that would fall on code enforcement. But 90+% of your situations are going to be handled during the construction phase, not intending to be a long-standing enforcement issue through the life of the property. That's my understanding of.
Well, the intent is related to building permits. I mean, that's when it comes up. And it's on new things, that there's no retroactive portion to it. It's just as we move forward, as these developments start growing in outskirts of town and those kinds of things, that we actually can keep tabs on some of that stuff. And it's not, residentially, they plant grass, they can move it. It's more on the lines of if we have the bigger properties, how do we deal with it? If we had Smith Mill, for example, that would be an enormous amount of landscaping that they would have to do to protect their neighbors.
So help me understand I've never built a house or built a business. Before they can move in, they have to get an occupancy permit, or how does that work?
Right.
So
Yeah,
do you have to go see them for that?
We do 4 reviews during the course of the build, footing foundations, plan review, footing foundations, framing, and then a final.
Okay. So something that's very near and dear to my heart is addressing.
Numbers, yes.
Having visible numbers. We've had that a half a dozen times here in the last year where the fire department gets called someplace. We know where it is because we know.
Right.
But the ambulance coming from Del Rapids or from Sioux Falls or Humboldt or wherever we're getting that day, they're relying on a GPS unit, and they get in the neighborhood, and especially in the commercial development on the north end, we still have businesses up there that.
They've all got notices, to get that done. But that's actually where it started when we brought that up. Residentially, everybody's stone on the front of their garage. I mean, it's almost normal anymore.
Right.
The commercial side is where that struggle has. And we have specific requirements for size of letters and contrast colors and that kind of stuff.
But it's the same thing I fall back to all the time. We have rules, we just don't have great enforcement of those rules at times. Until somebody finds out it's a problem, and then we send them letters.
Right.
And then we send them more letters, and they still don't do anything about it, and, yeah,
And some of the, when Darwin was here, when you had a stick in the ground, you better have an address on it, you know? I mean, that was his rule. And he didn't give occupancy permits either. The house had to be done and finalized before they like to move it to Joe, when they got occupancy permit, you know, to move in. He wouldn't give them. And I know people that he told to get out of the house and it wasn't done. So I'm just saying that, but he did have a number on the lot or something right off the bat.
Yeah, it's like anything, the city needs leverage and permits are those leverage, I mean, whether you admit it or not, that's what a permit is, right? So building permit, occupancy permit, that's what you gotta hold until all the boxes are checked.
Okay, well, is there a motion on,
There need to be some amendments made to this. It's in direct contradiction to city code portions of it, this ordinance.
Yeah,
Like the right-of-way portion, some spelling in here.
There's a few things that.
Yeah.
I think we need it fixed and it needs
Well,
to come
and
back.
so that needs to get amended tonight
No,
to it, right?
they need to just, I think, just take it, fix it.
Wait, table it again? Okay.
well, if it's not right.
Or we can vote it down and then we can just get it all squared away and then we can run it back through at that time.
So you're gonna run into this being a substantial amendment either way, so you're gonna have another 5 days in between.
That's what our second meeting for.
Okay, there you go. Well, then you're gonna have to wait after that meeting, but the amendment's ready.
Well,
Whatever.
it doesn't have to be in today.
Okay.
Plenty of time to work on it. I'm gonna make a motion to approve. Move to approve.
Move to approve. With the code issues in here.
Then I'm gonna say nay when they ask me
Okay.
to vote. So that this time gets done.
okay, is there a second?
I'm confused on what we're voting on here right now.
Because if we move to approve and then you second it, then I can, when they come around and say yay or nay, you say nay. And then we vote it down
Or
and it
just don't
dies.
second it.
Can't we just reject it?
Or don't, we can say move to
What do you want
reject.
me to say?
Nobody seconded it.
Don't say anything.
All right, dies.
Okay, so then have the written amendment then, because I shared the comments, right? So now I'll write up the amendment then.
So you want it approved with the amendment?
Right, I had given you the whole sheet with the comments, like the amendment that,
Oh, I have that.
oh, okay, oh, I guess so.
It wasn't anything extensive and the one that we commented on, I wrote
So then you want to table.
an hour ago.
Yeah, you can't approve it tonight without the amendment, otherwise
Yeah.
you're gonna, okay, so that motion dies for lack of a second. So,
Do you need a motion to table it?
yes,
So moved.
Yay.
Second.
Can I have a second?
okay. Shooty,
Should have just said yes last week.
Roll call.
okay, Shooty,
Yes.
Arstead,
Aye.
Fire,
Aye.
all right, table until next meeting.
Okay. Second reading of ordinance 377, an ordinance of the city of Crook, South Dakota, amending the municipal code, city of Crook, South Dakota by amending Title 7, Public Nuisances, Chapter 7.08, Other Public Nuisances, Chapter 7.0802, failure to remove ice and snow from sidewalks.
This I'll move to approve.
Second.
Roll call.
Shooty,
Aye.
Arstead,
Aye.
Fire.
Aye.
All right, get my page turned. Okay, second reading of ordinance 378. An ordinance of the city of Crooks, South Dakota, amending the code of ordinances of the city of Crooks by amending Title II Administration, Chapter 2.03 Elected Officials, Section 2.0301 Form of Government.
I'll move to approve with the question when somebody seconds it.
Second.
Any discussion?
So this fixes the alderman's,
Staggering of the
and we do
terms.
the mayor?
And then the next cleanup portion in July, once the new law goes into effect.
Roll call.
Shooty,
Aye.
Harsted,
Aye.
Fire.
Aye.
Okay, new business. Appointment to city council to fill the vacancy of alderman for Ward 1 and oath of office for Mr. Zach Dickus and Tobias.
Well, let's administer the oath of office and, well, first you need to, so you make the recommendation, you need a motion.
Okay,
Move.
Second.
roll call.
Shooty,
Aye.
Harsted,
Aye.
Fire.
Aye.
Oh, aye.
And now
Now the oath of office.
we'll read you the oath of office.
Yeah. Actually, that's,
Yeah, come on.
You still wanna do this, right?
yeah, that's, so we just need you to read that and name in there.
And then when you're done, you can sit over there by Mike.
Yeah, it's-
Once you read it, it's over.
once you put pen to paper.
This is what we call a short meeting.
We're getting kind of long here.
By the way, Zach lives on West Fifth Street.
What they'll need to do is
uh,
hold up your hand and read that whole,
yeah, before you get to Winterberry, right?
Yeah, just three houses from wherever.
From Clyde, remember Clyde Glanzer? He did a lot of our water and sewer scoping and stuff. He bought Clyde's old house.
Sorry, that's good though.
All right. I, Zachary Dacus, have been appointed to the office of Alderman of the City of Crooks, South Dakota. Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of South Dakota, and I will faithfully and impartially, to the best of my knowledge and ability, perform all the duties of my said office of Alderman of the City of Crooks, South Dakota, as provided by law. Further, I will render true account of all money, credit, accounts, and property of any kind that come into my possession while performing my duties.
Oh.
Thank you.
And you can sign there and then date.
Please.
First reading of ordinance 379, which is supplemental appropriations, an ordinance of the city of Crooks, South Dakota, providing for 2026 supplemental appropriations for $19,950.
This is to pay off the used day payloader note. We have set aside money, 1 year's worth of debt payments. Next year will be the last year. This is to get more debt off the books. So this establishes the spending authority for that. And, yeah,
Move to approve.
no, it's just the first reading.
First reading, okay. Resolution 2026-22, a resolution of the City Council of Crooks, South Dakota, transferring spending authority from the contingency function to meet the obligation of the city for 2026 in the amount of $1,200,
$1,202.
$1,202.
We got another bill for this West Ave Phase 3 project, and I mean, it's been a whole thing, and then we need to supplement for $2 worth of interest that we went over because of the city shop note. Not over yet, but which are approved, but we need to have the spending authority in place.
Move to approve.
Second.
Roll call.
Dicus. Shooty.
Aye.
Arstead.
Aye.
Fire.
Aye.
Is it Dicus or Dickus?
Dacus.
Dicus, okay.
Deal line.
Okay. All right. Resolution 2026-23, a resolution of the City Council of Crook, South Dakota, establishing a policy for the extension of natural gas lines and setting fees. And I will let Tobias explain it, but we've been doing a lot of gas stuff for free over the years. We're trying to get our costs out of it.
So City Code Chapter 10.05 allows the city to extend natural gas lines, which is service lines and mains. Right now, we're collecting on mains, but we don't really have an enforcement mechanism where it requires them to sign an agreement. I know I'm big on the agreement portion. So what this does is it increases, it adjusts these hookup fees and for installing services and connecting to the system, because right now we're subsidizing them. Because, and this is just the labor of the contractor. This is not the piping or any of the material. Right now, a standard service will run us about $1,020 in labor. And then there is boring when it exceeds 100 feet, which we have also been eating, so to speak. And then we've seen frost charges billed for certain winter installs. And we need to recoup at least on that end the cost for the third-party contractor. Because right now we're collecting $500 per hookup fee, and that is insufficient, that's half. And a normal recovery or recoupment rate for this is, call it 5 to 10 years on units and base fee. And this just provides us with the construct, the authority to revise our natural gas service agreement, which is for the distribution line, and then compile the same agreement for mains, which the natural gas service agreement is ready to go after the attorney. The other one will be simple. So it just gets that in place and authorizes the personnel, me or Todd, to execute that and move ahead. Because that's another kind of, we have inferred the authority from the code, and that's why we do these motions, but this will like explicitly, okay, guys can figure it out.
So if you remember, I don't know, 6, 7 years ago, we went from 0 to 500 because the old way of doing it was, I think we were afraid, we were trying to get propane users. Well, that era is gone, and we need to recoup our costs. It's crazy to at least not do that, and it's mostly for new builds, and it's just like a water hookup fee or a sewer hookup fee. And anyway, I'll stop there.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Roll call.
Stichels. Shooty. Harsted.
Aye.
Meyer.
Aye.
Okay. Authorized signature on warranty deed, corrective action for contract for deed on the baseball land. So is that authorizing me to
Yep, sign.
sign for that was 2 acres we bought that we found out we're 2 acres too short for 4.
So, no, this is a whole boondoggle. This is actually unrelated to that.
Oh,
So remember we signed the original contract, we didn't say a portion of track 3, it's a track 3. Then it was parceled again and again and again. So track 3 now is the north portion that the Benson kid bought. But we still have a contract for deed on that tract. So this will allow Mayor Osby to sign the corrective deed. So, and then we need to get an addendum to our contract for deed going too. So it's been a joy to work through that.
Move to approve.
Second.
roll call.
Stichels. Shooty.
Aye.
Harsted.
Aye.
Meyer.
Aye.
Okay, need a motion to authorize transfer of budgeted funds of $9,000 from liquor, lodging, and dining fund to general fund.
So last year when we did our appropriations looking forward with potential shortfall in sales tax because of the then anticipated recession, we reviewed state law, specifically 10-52A. It permits you to transfer liquor, lodging, and dining funds to the general fund, for example, for land acquisition. This is a way to defray the $63,000 payment or assist with it. So
For the
that's-
baseball land.
For the baseball land. So it helps us to lighten that, because right now, we're
Move to approve. Roll call.
Dykes, Shooty,
Aye.
Arstead,
Aye.
Byer.
Aye.
And the next is, appointment to fill a vacancy on the planning and zoning board. And, Dan Renner is here and he would like to be on the board and, we have a motion and a vote?
So you made the recommendation, so who wants to make the motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
Who's second? Okay, Arstead. Okay,
Roll call.
Dykes,
Aye.
Shooty,
Aye.
Arstead,
Aye.
Byer.
Aye.
Welcome, Dan. We'll see you the next PZ meeting. And Dan, by the way, has engineering background.
Sidebar.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Wait, open comment.
Oh, shoot.
Oh,
None. None.
Scratch that motion.
consideration of amendments to Crook City
We
Code.
talked about that.
Talked about that.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Open comments, anybody? No? No?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Welcome, Dan. Thank you. Appreciate it.
7:34, okay, Dykes.
I'm glad we found a spot for you.
Aye. Shooty, yeah.
Aye.
Shooty,
Aye.
Arstead,
Aye.
Byer.
Aye.
Okay, we adjourn.
Bye.
Okay, well,
You had to sit a long time for that. By the way, Dan's, if you don't know, Dan's grandpa and grandma are Gary and Mary Brentro on Fifth Street.